Hello and welcome to Movies You Missed podcast, episode 95, the first episode that we are going to start talking about 2024 movies that we saw in theaters for the week, and that's because we just did our 2023 recap episode.
Yeah, so much fun.
I'm V.
And I'm John.
And we love to recommend movies to our listeners without spoiling them.
No spoilers here, including in our 2023 wrap-up.
That's
Although
true.
I really wanted to spoil some of the worst movies of the year.
Just to save everyone.
Just to save everybody else, yes, from seeing some of the worst movies, of course, in my opinion, of 2023.
I respect that.
And I respect yours.
Thank you. We are diving into very classic comedies this week.
Very, very classic indeed. Black and whites, going back to the black and whites.
Getting close to being 100 years old.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, actually, mine will be 100 years old in 9 years. That's pretty crazy.
Yes, it is.
Holy shit, that's actually pretty wild. I just put that together. Yeah. Wow.
Well, especially because when we grew up and when we were kids, people talked about the invention of movies, right? Because it had only been 50, 60 years prior. And, and now we're creeping up on 100 years. It's nuts.
You and me, we are not, but the movies are. Yes.
We are still...
over 30 short from 40.
That's right.
Not much longer short from 40, but hey, we're going to keep it going.
Yeah, I mean, our audience doesn't know any better, right?
That's true. Unless you know me personally, you don't know what year I was born.
Unfortunately, my entire family listens to this podcast, so they'd call us out real quick.
Oh, yeah, I'll bet. I think there was once or twice where I actually mentioned my age when like certain movies came out. So if you've listened to those episodes, maybe you have been able to put it together. Unless it's just something you don't give a shit about, which I hope you don't.
Exactly. I mean, if people like doing math, yes, they could have figured it out.
I don't, so fuck math and fuck algebra and geometry. And you have to get a calculator for a whole bunch of things in my life.
I was a math major for 3 years.
I'm sorry.
But thankfully, this isn't a mathematics podcast. This is a movie podcast. We are always so excited to not only meet up every week to discuss movies, but also to discuss them for our audience. And we always love feedback and really appreciate the positive feedback we got from our recap episode last week.
Yes, it seems like a lot of people enjoyed it, and I was very glad to hear that because I went a little harsh on a couple of things, but it is what it is. That's why you listen, I hope. Honestly. I hope you listen because you're like, oh, I wonder what John's going to say next. Kind of like Howard Stern back in the 90s.
I thought the movies you should miss list was one of the funniest parts of the whole episode.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because it was the most hated movies of the year, and my passion and hatred for them really shined.
Really comes through everybody's speakers quite nicely.
Indeed.
And for those of you who's joined us before, you know we love to discuss the new movies we saw in theaters this week.
Yeah.
And I believe we both went.
We did. I believe you saw more than me this week, though.
Yes. Doesn't happen often, but it is one of those times.
Indeed it is. So why don't you take it away since you have more to discuss?
Alrighty, our first 2024 movies in theater update. I went and saw the new David Ayer, Jason Statham-led The Beekeeper.
Nice.
It is a very fun and slightly ridiculous action movie, but if you enjoyed John Wick, you will love this film.
Oh, all right. I've got to see it before it leaves theaters. It's I felt like the trailer showed you everything, but it still was one of those movies like, nah, I got to see all these explosions and badass fight sequences on the big screen.
There are actually a couple of surprises in the movie that weren't in the trailer, so it's definitely worth seeing and certainly in theaters because it's such an action-oriented movie. And the second movie I went and saw with my sister, we went and watched Argylle.
Oh, sweet.
It's so much fun. I highly recommend it. It's a Matthew Vaughn movie, so it's slightly ridiculous, similar to The Kingsman, but it's a really entertaining time. It's unapologetically fun. And oh my God, I'm in love with Sam Rockwell. I love him so much. You know the man has charisma when you're more drawn to him in the movie than Henry Cavill in that movie.
Oh, wow. Awesome. I know Amy wants to see it, so I think we're going to try and go see it over the next week or two.
It's delightful. Don't take it seriously and you'll have a great time.
All right. I like that.
Yeah. And what did you see in theaters this week?
I went to see one of the Best Picture nominees because I like to watch all of them. Now I'll have 4 left to watch, one that I'm putting off until the absolute last minute. But this one I was glad to see in theaters because the trailer was great. I'm a big Jeffrey Wright fan. And the rest of the cast was great too. Erica Alexander, John Orwitz, Tracy Ellis Ross, Keith David, Issa Rae, Sterling K. Brown, just a cavalcade of great actors. This movie's written by Cord Jefferson. It's actually based on a novel, which I didn't know until I saw this movie. But this is American fiction about the black writer that decides to get a little satirical with one of his books, and it takes off. This movie is very, very entertaining. From beginning to end, it is hilarious. It's got some familial drama going on as well. So it's a good human interest piece. Good comedy, good satire. I really enjoyed it. I don't think it's going to win Best Picture because we all are pretty much in agreement that Oppenheimer's likely to win Best Picture this year, but it's still a very good movie. I highly recommend anybody that wants to see this movie definitely give it the support in theaters.
Awesome. That's so good to hear because I really wanted to watch the film. I'm a big fan of Jeffrey Wright. However, I didn't know if it was a funny movie or not.
Oh yeah. Comedy from beginning to end. Very good movie. Give it a shot.
Fabulous. All right. And those are the movies we saw in theaters this week.
Indeed. Keep theaters alive, everybody. Keep going to the movies. And I think it's time to jump into the black and whites. V, I believe you start us off this week.
I don't because it's episode 95, so you go first.
That's right. That's what I meant.
Exactly.
Of course it is.
Exactly. Again, you're not good at math.
No, I'm not, and I will hold that honestly. I never was good at math. Somehow I got a B in high school in math and was able to graduate. But
that's great.
All. I chose a movie that is very, very well-renowned. It's not my personal favorite of this repertoire of movies from these 4 brothers. These guys were comedic geniuses. They dropped movie after movie. Actually, Lucille Ball is in one of their earlier movies. It was one of her very first starring roles. The movie is called Room Service. And if you were following along last week, I actually had chosen a different movie. The only reason why I was not able to do that movie was because I could not find it on streaming anywhere. So I was able to find this one, which is a very close second favorite of mine. So it's no longer Animal Crackers. This is Duck Soup by the Marx Brothers. Ladies and gentlemen, Duck Soup from 1933.
Both Marx Brothers movies, so we just did a small pivot.
Yeah, that's all. So again, if you followed along and watched Animal Crackers, I hope you loved it, because it is great. But if not, that's totally fine. And if you have not seen Duck Soup, it's on Apple TV right now. It's an hour and 8 minutes long. So if you have an hour and 8 minutes to kill and you want to watch one of the craziest, hilarious screwball comedies in black and white of the Marx Brothers, please do give it a shot. For those of you that don't know anything about the Marx Brothers, they were 4 brothers from New York. They were Jewish. They go by the names of Groucho Marx, Chico Marx, Harpo Marx, and Zeppo Marx. I love these guys. My dad introduced me to the Marx Brothers when I was about 7 or 8, I think, is when he showed me Animal Crackers, which was the original plan for this episode. I really found it hilarious. Also, going back to when we've discussed comedies that we've watched with our fathers, my dad laughed a lot, and so did I. But then I watched it on my own several years later. Maybe I was like 12 or 13, and I ended up really liking that. After that, I watched Horse Feathers, The Coconuts, Duck Soup, Room Service, etc., etc. And very luckily, there's a theater in Santa Monica, which is a suburb of Chicago. Excellent. Not really, no. It's a small city outside of Los Angeles. I'm sure many people on the West Coast know about Santa Monica, but there's a fantastic theater there called the Aero Theater that is run by the American Cinematheque. And in 2016, they did a Marx Brothers double feature, and my father and I were very lucky enough to attend that double feature. They showed Room Service, and I couldn't tell you what the other one was because it's been several years, and I remember Room Service was definitely the funnier of the two, which is kind of how it goes, you know? Like you go see a movie or a double feature, and one of them is better than the other, and that's just kind of, I think, how it always goes. Which reminds me, I actually did see a Alfred Hitchcock double feature at the Aero Theater very, very long ago with an ex-girlfriend of mine, and I only remember the first one because it was a lot better. Anyway, moving on.
The ex-girlfriend or the movie?
Good question. The movie was much better than the ex-girlfriend.
Oh, good. Okay.
Indeed. Now, getting into the nitty-gritty of Duck Soup, again, 1 hour and 8 minutes long. This movie is written by Bert Klayman and Henry Rudy. The movie is directed by Leo McCarey. Leo McCarey actually went on to direct quite a few of the Marx Brothers movies, and I have a couple of quotes that I'm going to read from him in a little bit because he was not really interested in being involved with the Marx Brothers. But again, we'll get into that in a little bit.
Oh, no.
I know, yeah, it's very fascinating stuff. And again, this is the 30s, and there's just so much fascination and so much like wonderful Hollywood comedic history with the Marx Brothers. On top of that, for Christmas this last year in 2023, my wife got me a biography on the Marx Brothers that is a first edition that she found in a very small bookstore in Phoenix, Arizona.
Whoa.
I know. It was it was one of those gifts that I opened up and I was completely unexpected. I cannot wait to read it. It's a thick one, too. So I might read that in the next couple of weeks once I finish the book I'm currently reading. But anyway, Duck Soup is set in the fictitious country of Fredonia. Now, there is also a city in New York called Fredonia, and this city was very unhappy with the use of Fredonia because they added an E, so it wasn't necessarily Fredonia, New York. And the response from Groucho Marx was basically, change the name of your city, it's disrupting our production. And thought that was pretty great.
That's the perfect response.
Absolutely. And V, I know this is your first Marx Brothers experience, so I'm very curious to hear what you thought, but let me break this movie down a little bit before we get into that. So this country, Fredonia, is in the market for a new dictator. They just lost their current one, and there's an heiress named Gloria Teasdale who is willing to drop $20 million. Now think of this. 1933, of course, this is set in a fictitious time, in a fictitious country, but $20 million in 1933 probably had to be like $150 million now. Like I'm curious, V, why don't you look that up while I break this down a little bit more?
Okay.
Perfect. So Teasdale is willing to drop $20 million only if a certain dictator will be appointed named Rufus Firefly. Rufus Firefly is played by Groucho Marx. For those of you that don't know who Groucho Marx is, he is referenced throughout history in just about every comedic form. Looney Tunes, even Aladdin, the genie, dresses up as Groucho Marx for a second. What's the inflation number?
$20 million in 1933 is the equivalent of $468 million in 2024.
Good Lord Almighty.
Heiress
That's
is
incredible.
the appropriate title then.
Hell yeah, absolutely. So Fredonia is bankrupt. They are on the verge of collapse. They're also planning on, without this dictator, starting a war with Sylvania, which is also another made-up country, for this movie and for comedic purposes. Rufus Firefly agrees to become the dictator after a little bit of convincing from Teasdale and a few other people. He's really not interested in the politics or the rational, situation that he's about to be appointed into.
Doing anything related to a functioning government?
Exactly. Yes. And interestingly enough, this movie actually came out during the Depression, 1933, right? So a lot of audiences were very unhappy with the way that this movie portrayed instability of government and the buffoonery, if you will, of a dictator that really just didn't give a fuck. And apparently Benito Mussolini banned this movie in Italy because he thought this movie was a jab at him. And when the Marx Brothers found out about that, they were beyond ecstatic because they just thought that was fucking hysterical. So at one point or another, after Rufus Firefly is appointed dictator of Fredonia, we meet the current leader of Sylvania, and he's trying to actually figure out a way to bring down Firefly and bring down Fredonia. So he hires these two spies, Ciccolino and Pinky, played by Harpo and Chico Marx. And if anybody knows who Harpo Marx is, he's the curly-haired one with the top hat. He never speaks. He's all about sight gags. And we have Chico Marx, who is an Italian fast talker and fucking hilarious. I love both of these guys anytime they're on screen. The only one that really isn't in this one as much is Zeppo Marx, and this actually was the last movie that all four brothers did together because Zeppo wanted out of the contract because he was not very happy with how he was portrayed in any of the movies that they made, which is kind of lame.
Whoa.
But at the same time, hey, yeah, he was the one that was kind of getting most of the grunt and most of the butt of the jokes in a lot of the other movies. V, if you ever do continue on watching Marx Brothers movies, you'll understand what I think Zeppo was talking about, because I understand having seen a lot of these other movies. But anyway, the leader of Sylvania has this very beautiful girlfriend that he tries to get basically in Firefly's pants, and
go seduce him for me.
Exactly, yeah. Go seduce him for me. Figure out a way to help me bring this guy down because my two spies, Pinky and Cicciolino, are really not doing shit. Cicciolino keeps talking about the fact that he's not sure which side he wants to be on after he meets Firefly. So there's a lot of this back and forth of is Cicciolino going to be, on the Sylvanian side, or is he going to be on the Fredonian side? And for the rest of the movie, really, this leader of Sylvania is trying to figure out a way to bring down Firefly and also trying to marry Teasdale, who has this $20 million fortune that she's dropping on this country because they're bankrupt. And this war has been declared by Firefly on Sylvania, but Firefly doesn't really know why the fuck he called war on Sylvania. He's just doing it because he's a dictator and he has the power to do it. And the rest of the movie is everybody just kind of convening to figure out what the best course of action would be. Take down Fredonia or take down Sylvania. And that's pretty much it. And on top of that, the hour and 8 minutes are nothing but fucking hysterical. Watching this the other night, I hadn't seen this movie in maybe 10, 15 years. I was fucking laughing very hard. And V, I don't know what you thought about it. Before I get into any of the trivia, please fill me in on your first Marx Brothers experience, because I've been dying to introduce you to the Marx Brothers since we started this podcast. So take it away. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Which one? Is it on your movies you should miss, or is it on your movies you can't miss?
That's right. It's definitely on my movies you can't miss. It's very funny, and historically speaking, in terms of film, of course, I immediately was like, oh, this is where the Three Stooges got all their ideas. Got it.
Right? Yes.
And I'm wondering if the Marx Brothers were from vaudeville before they went into movies.
You hit that nail on the head. They definitely were. There's a lot of acts that they did during the vaudeville days that are in their movies. One in particular is in this movie, and we'll discuss that in a little bit because it went on to be in another very famous TV show with a very famous redhead, and we'll talk about that shortly. But
nice.
Yeah, very, very vaudeville, very hysterical. Again, I was introduced to the Marx Brothers when I was very young, and my dad thought that I could handle it, not that it's soup. It's all G-rated material. There's really no innuendo, except though in this movie there's 2 sexual innuendos, and that was pre-code, if you will, before all of the censorship really started kind of getting into place in motion pictures. There's one line where Firefly says, oh, I gotta go clean the crumbs out of my bed, I'm expecting company. And then at one point the leader of Sylvania's girlfriend says, is there anything I can do to help? He goes, oh yes, I can tell you about it later. And he gives her a wink.
Yes.
And it's kind of like, oh ho ho, I wonder what he's talking about there. But yeah, very G-rated, very hilarious. Again, mostly sight gags, except for Groucho Marx, who was just
my favorite.
Absolute genius.
Yes.
Yeah, as now the age that I am, and even when I went and saw this double feature with my father, I was just completely in awe of Groucho Marx. And this guy, I don't know if you noticed, but his mustache is not real.
It's not at all.
I don't know how long it took me to realize that when I was a kid.
It's like, what the hell? That's not real. I always thought it was.
Yeah. Oh, it totally. Yeah, because every other
it's
rendition of it's shoe polish. Yeah, it was a shoe polish mustache. And
that's
any
not
other
good for you.
No, and especially when he's smoking cigars, right? It's like, oh gosh,
let's put more petroleum products on my face.
Hell yeah,
next to an open flame. But no, he was actually my favorite part of this whole movie. The other 2 brothers are funny, but
yeah,
the scenes with the peanut seller, I thought just went on a little bit too long, and they were a little too ridiculous for me, but everything that Groucho said had me rolling from his entrance to the very end of the movie. He is so rapid fire, quick wit, and I'm sure a lot of that has to do with the script, but his deliveries are fantastic, and there are so many good one-liners, and a couple of my favorite scenes were when he said, the leader of Sylvania comes to him and he's like, yeah, she slapped me in the face. And Groucho's like, well, what'd you say to her? And the guy leans in and whispers in his ear, and Groucho Marx slaps him across the face. It was so good.
It was awesome.
And then when he's talking to Teasdale and he's wooing her a little bit, and it's this I had actually seen this clip before in classic movie clips, but I had never known what movie it was from. When they're cheek to cheek and you're in the kitchen leaning over the stove, but but I can't see the stove.
Yeah, exactly. That's so funny.
He's so great. So yes, I absolutely loved this movie. It's hilarious, and I liked, similar to a lot of the other classic movies that we've been able to watch over the last couple of years, we're making those connections of, oh, this is where this later movie got its inspiration from.
Exactly.
And so that very classic mirror scene that the brothers do together.
Oh, yeah.
They recreate that scene in an episode of The X-Files.
No shit.
Yes, it's an episode in season 6 called Dreamland. And David Duchovny recreates that scene almost move for move.
Whoa.
And so watching it this time, I was like, oh, what to watch the original. This is so awesome.
Oh, that's so cool.
So yeah, I had a great time. I'm excited that Animal Crackers is on a future episode for you. I'll definitely be happy to dive into it. And yeah, the Marx Brothers, it's very classic comedy. I mean, it's so different than the comedy in this millennia.
Yes, indeed it is.
But it still holds up pretty well. And especially when you look at it at the lens of the 1930s, you have a really great time.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm very glad to hear that you enjoyed it. Speaking of that mirror sequence, 2 decades later, Harpo Marx showed up on an episode of I Love Lucy. And Lucille Ball and Harpo Marx did that whole thing on I Love Lucy. And it brought the house down. Of course it did. You know, it's a classic Marx brother and Lucille Ball. And like I mentioned early on in this first few minutes here, Lucille Ball is one of her first movies was Room Service with the Marx Brothers.
Right.
And that movie, oh my God. there's a sequence in Room Service that thinking about it now, I'm just like, it is absolutely mind-boggling how they did it. Like, I don't know how they did it. I truthfully kind of don't want to know. It's, you know, it's kind of like how I like to keep things in the magic of the movie, but it's really wild. And that whole mirror sequence actually is based off of a vaudeville act, and it took them 2 hours. Yeah, it took them 2 hours to shoot that on set. So it wasn't like some crazy long production, but
whoa, I figured it would have taken the day.
Exactly. And I feel like today, with the attention span of everybody, it probably was, because, you know, everybody's got their phones and everybody coming at them and whatnot. And I'm sure you noticed that right when that mirror sequence starts in Duck Soup, there's no audio at all.
No.
So what I'm thinking is just like a silent movie. You know, the director's back like, all right, now you're going to move your glasses. Okay, and you're both going to look at, okay, come on now.
Grab the hat.
Exactly, yeah. And that's kind of where it like fell apart for me personally. You know, there's that the grab the hat moment, but I love how they both like go between mirrors, if you will.
Yeah, that was
like,
great.
That was so good. The mirror to mirror moment was really great. Now, again, you know, I don't have a whole lot of trivia on this, which I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of glad, and I'm hoping that in this memoir that my wife got me for Christmas, there's a lot of not just Duck Soup, but Animal Crackers and the Coconuts and Room Service and Day at the Races and A Night at the Opera. And I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And they just did so many movies. And they actually did a lot of movies in New York City, but this one in particular was shot in Pasadena, California.
Nice.
Which is interesting, yeah. And there is that moment of a landscape, and that is actually Spain instead of Fredonia. So there's that little illusion that's been killed for everybody, but it's still pretty cool.
And not surprising. It was the 1930s after all.
Exactly. And like I mentioned, Sylvania is a made-up country. The original name of the country in the early drafts of the script was called Amnesia, which I thought was kind of funny as well. There wasn't an OG name for Fredonia, which is still, I just think it's pretty fucking funny.
Oh, I think it's hilarious.
Groucho Marx was interviewed several years after this movie came out, and the interviewer asked him what the political significance of Duck Soup is, and Groucho, in perfect Groucho fashion, said, "What political significance? We were just 4 Jewish men trying to get a laugh."
Perfect.
Thought that was great.
And the funny thing is, Sylvania is now a brand.
Really?
It's an automotive brand.
No kidding.
Yeah, and so that's why I thought it was so funny, just you talking about Sylvania. I was like, I know that name. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. It's a brand I've seen a million times.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I guess I just haven't noticed it. Maybe I'll keep my eyes out for it now. I know I mentioned earlier that Leo McCarey was not really interested in working with the Marx Brothers so much. In 1967, he was interviewed about Duck Soup, and he said that he never really wanted to shoot the movie. The Marx Brothers were after him, though, for quite some time. When he refused, the Marx Brothers got angry with Paramount because for whatever reason, they were just like, okay, well, fuck off, Paramount. They broke their contract and left Paramount. Believing that the Marx Brothers were now out of a Paramount contract, Leo McCarey signed a contract with Paramount. Very soon after that, the Marx Brothers reconciled with Paramount, and Paramount then put Leo McCarey on the Marx Brothers movie.
He couldn't escape.
He could not escape. And it was the most surprising thing about the film was that it succeeded, and all he said about the Marx Brothers was that they were absolutely out of their minds mad. But he had nothing but a great time, which is, wonderful to hear. And of course, you watch these movies, and yes, it's written. However, a lot of what Groucho says is all improvisation.
Oh, of course. Though.
Same with Chico.
Definitely tell that these guys were just running this set and just coming up with the craziest shit.
There's another movie, I can't remember which one it is, but there's a moment where Groucho looks off camera and actually says to the director, "You can't expect all the jokes to be funny," and then gets back into the movie.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I thought that was great.
That's awesome.
The writers for this movie, Harry, Ruby, and Bert Kalmar, were standing on set one day. They overheard a background actor saying, "I don't know who wrote this stuff, but they ought to be arrested. They should be in a different business."
Uh-oh.
Bert Kalmar was really upset about that, but he was a pretty calm dude. He said to Ruby, "I'm going to go over and hit that guy. Who does he think he is? He's just an extra." Before anything could happen, Chico found out that Ruby was going to do this, and he told them that he paid that extra to say that.
Whoa, just to cover that guy's ass, or did he really pay him?
Oh, no, he paid him. He just wanted to fuck with the writer. He totally paid the extra to say that so the writer would hear and get him angry. I think that's fucking hysterical.
That's awesome.
Of course, on the day, if I were him, I'd be like, "Who the fuck does this guy think he's a fucking background actor?" Because, of course, all background actors get a bad rep. Sorry, background, but you do. It is what it is. That's you help the scenes out a lot, but your personalities just, they aren't the greatest. Now, I do know a lot of great background actors, so that's not shooting everybody down.
No, it's just like herding cats, though.
It's worse than cats. And I know I mentioned earlier also that this was Zeppo's last movie with his brothers. This is also one of the only films that all four brothers actually have a musical number in together. Most of the Marx Brothers movies have a musical number or two, or three, or four.
Had no idea and did not see that coming at all, and then all of a sudden everyone was singing.
Yeah. Animal Crackers actually opens with a musical number as well, and it's actually a very hysterical one, similarly to Duck Soup. And this is one of the only films also that does not include Harpo Marx doing one of his very famous harp solos. In a lot of other Marx Brothers movies, there are musical interludes, and Chico and Harpo do just solos, just for the fuck of it, and they're very talented musicians as well.
Is that where he got his nickname? Harpo?
Oh, that could be. I did not put that together at all until just now. So thank you, V, for calling that out.
Oh my God.
I've been a Marx Brothers fan for 30 years, and I did not put that one together. I'll have to read. I'm sure it's in that book, and if it's not that reason, then I will let you know.
Please do.
I will. I mentioned that this movie was not very well received because of the buffoonery and the cynicism of political crisis, because of the fact that this movie was released during the Great Depression of the 30s in the United States. But it was the sixth highest-grossing film of 1933.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and like I said, Leo McCarey was very happy with that.
It made $5,000.
I actually could not find a worldwide gross, but the domestic box office wasn't the greatest. It could have been better. Granted, this is the 1930s, so I wonder, how much a ticket cost. 10 cents, 15 cents. V, why don't you look that up while I continue on with some of this?
Will do.
Duck Soup, the name of the movie, is actually a slang term for easygoing and effortless. And I feel like that's perfect because everybody in this movie is obviously effortlessly having a great time. Not only the fact that they're in a Marx Brothers movie, but it's one of those movies that's just so funny from, I would say, like minute 4 and really doesn't let up. And V, I know you said the whole thing with the popcorn guy got a little overkill for you, and I'll agree. It could have cut off at maybe like minute 2 and not gone to minute 4, but I liked a lot of the sight gags, and the whole thing with Harpo having the guy hold his leg is like an ongoing thing with Harpo Marx. I know he did that in the I Love Lucy episode as well. Oh, V, it looks like you have the price of a ticket in 1933.
It was between $0.25 and 35 cents.
Wow, that's so crazy. In 1990, this film was inducted into the National Film Registry by the U.S. Library of Congress, so it is definitely going to be there forever.
Saved in perpetuity.
Until the Civil War breaks out and everything gets destroyed.
There is a movie about that this year.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, British writer Alex Garland, for writing a movie about the U.S. going to Civil War. Much appreciated. You did write 28 Days Later, so I can't wait to see Civil War. I just kind of wish that it wasn't Kirsten Dunst and Fat Matt Damon in the movie, for crying out loud.
You mean...
Jesse Plemons.
Oh, I was thinking of Nick Offerman because he plays the president.
Oh, does Nick Offerman play the president? Yeah. No, I just saw Jesse Plemons and I was like, can these two not do a movie without each other anymore? Like,
no, they're married. They have a kid.
Doesn't mean they need to be in every movie together.
No, I think of Jesse Plemons as a little more like Philip Seymour Hoffman, actually.
No, there's nothing wrong with him as an actor. I think he's great, but I hated them both in Power of the Dog, so I don't want to see them in a movie together anymore.
They're great in the series Fargo.
Oh, I didn't know they were in the series Fargo.
Yeah, I think that's where they met.
I've never watched any of the series of Fargo, actually.
Oh, shit, that's a good show.
I love Jesse Plemons in Breaking Bad, though. I thought he was fucking awesome in that.
Chilling forever. I will never look at him the same because of Breaking Bad.
Definitely. Now, in the year 2000, AFI put this as the number 5 top 100 funniest comedies of all time.
Whoa.
In 2007, AFI ranked this movie as number 60 as one of the greatest films of all time. I think that's about a good placement for it.
Yeah, I think so too.
Especially for, the fact that this was in 2007 and who knows how old the people at AFI are making these lists are. This film's copyright is set to expire January 1st, 5 years from now, in 2029.
Interesting.
I know. I'm very curious if we're still here because of the Civil War that's about to begin.
Yeah, I was like, dude, speak for yourself. What the fuck? No,
if in
that
January
makes sense.
or in watch, there's going to be a 2033 remake of Duck Soup, and they're going to fuck it up and put Chris Pratt in the fucking lead role
of course.
as Groucho Marx. And J.J. Abrams is going to direct it.
No.
And no.
More respect for him than that.
I was like, who
Wes Anderson.
Who else could I say? Ah! Yeah, and then somebody that'll play it'll be Jonah Hill as Harpo Marx, and some other person that does a terrible Italian accent as Chico. Who knows? No, I hope not. If anybody's smart, they will not do any remakes of this movie. Now, granted, we've made it almost 100 years without one, so that's good. Now, there are references upon references upon references to the Marx Brothers, most notably Groucho Marx because of the way that, he walked. He had his famous walk in this movie. He's bent over. He's got the cigar in his mouth. And I know we mentioned just a little bit ago that there is a wonderful reference in Aladdin where the genie walks by. No substitutions, exchanges, or refunds.
Yes.
I like that moment. And I think Bugs Bunny does a whole shit ton of Groucho Marx impressions throughout the Looney Tunes repertoire. This was also one of 700 films produced between 1929 and 1949 at Paramount Pictures.
Jesus.
700 fucking movies in 20 years. Now, again, this movie's an hour and 8 minutes. There are other Marx Brothers movies that stretch an hour 30, hour 40. This one is their shortest movie. It is the most renowned, most respected, most loved of their entire catalog. And again, I love Duck Soup. Animal Crackers is still my favorite, and then it's Room Service, and then after that, it's A Night at the Opera and Day at the Races and Horse Feathers and Coconuts. They're just fantastic, and I love the fact that we are now finally, almost 100 episodes later, talking about the Marx Brothers, bringing them into our collection of episodes here. I'm really glad, V, that you enjoyed the movie. I can't wait to show you Animal Crackers when you're visiting next time. If you want to watch A Day at the Races or A Night at the Opera, we can do that as well. And like I mentioned before, this was the last Marx Brothers film with all 4 of the brothers because Zeppo decided to take his leave. This film was released on November 17th of 1933. A budget of $1.25 million. It did okay in the theaters then. Again, the audience reception was not great. It was financially successful upon its re-release in 1960. So almost 30 years later, it was re-released in 1960, and it became a financial box office everything.
Nice.
And the highest grossing film of 1933. V, I wonder if you can guess. It is a very, very famous movie. There is a collection of movies out right now, and another one coming with the lead, technically, of these movies, and this one in particular from 1933. I have this on DVD. I love this movie. It is a classic. There is a 3-hour, unnecessarily long remake directed by the Lord of the Rings director Peter Jackson. Naomi Watts is the blonde in the movie.
Oh, it's King Kong.
King Kong, indeed, yes. What a masterpiece of movie that one is. I love it so much. Not the Peter Jackson version. The original 1933 stop motion is a wonder of animation and live-action blend. That's actually could be another one on the list here with live-action and animation blend.
Oh,
stop
my
motion
God.
And live-action.
You pick that one, and I pick Kong Skull Island.
Ooh, I like that. That's a good one. Love Kong Skull Island. King Kong, how much do you think it brought in 1933?
$3 million.
$10 million.
Holy shit, that's actually pretty good.
That is a lot of money in 1933.
Yeah.
So I wonder what $10 million is.
$230-something million is what it is.
I'm going to say, yeah, you subtract the other 10 from that $20 million that Teasdale was going to drop for Rufus Firefly. So yes, we have that one as number 1, King Kong. Number 2 is a movie that I actually have never heard of called She Done Him Wrong. It brought in $2.2 million. And then another very famous film that I still have not seen. I hear great things about it. 42nd Street brought in $1.4 million for the year of 1933. I did not find the 4th or 5th highest grossing film anywhere online, but the 6th highest grossing film of 1933 is Duck Soup from the Marx Brothers.
Nice.
So that is Duck Soup, the classic comedy. Again, from the Marx Brothers. Check it out if you would like to. It is streaming for rent on Apple TV, which is how I watched it. If you have not seen a Marx Brothers movie, it is a great place to start.
It is.
Wonderful. Now, V, I think it's time to go a few years in the future of the 1930s in the black and white world with your pick, who stars an actor from one of my early picks.
That's right. We are actually only going a few years later, 5 in fact, to 1938, to another very classic film and comedy.
Yes, indeed.
This is Bringing Up Baby.
2 screwball comedies in one. I love it.
That's right, and it's also your first ever time watching it too.
That's absolutely correct.
So we both had first watches this week for our respective picks.
Losing our virginities all over again.
Exactly. And this has Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn in it, so I'm very happy with that.
Oh, my gosh. Katharine Hepburn, I don't know if I've ever seen her look more beautiful than in this movie.
Oh, my God, right?
Oh, my Lord. I wanted to just freeze frame and print out her face and put it in the theater room.
Oh, God, they are both gorgeous people.
Oh, yeah, Cary Grant's pretty hot, too, but my gosh,
So...
Katharine Hepburn. Woo.
He's so hot, I lost my voice.
He's a pretty damn hot man.
Yes, and this is actually the second of 4 movies that they did together.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, they had great chemistry.
They really do. I got to watch those other 3 now, absolutely.
Right? And so for this one, Bringing Up Baby, let me tell you a little bit about the plot. You're right, it is a screwball comedy. However, it's a lot less on the physical side of things and a lot more on the fast-paced dialogue and just crazy misunderstandings.
Oh, yeah.
And so it starts out with this very nerdy, very subdued Dr. David Huxley, who is a paleontologist at a museum in New York. He's assembling a brontosaurus, and I thought you'd get a kick out of the very first scene of this film because it's
hell yeah.
Giant dinosaur fossil that they're assembling.
I loved that, actually. That really was like, oh, hell yeah, I'm down.
Good. And he is preparing to get married to a similarly very subdued, very button-up person named Alice. And one of my favorite first lines of this movie is Alice talking about their marriage because they're about to be married within a couple days. Mm-hmm. And she says, "Our marriage must contain no domestic entanglements of any kind. Must be purely about your work." And he's like, "Really? No kids?" And she's like, "Nope."
All right.
Zero romance, but at least you knew ahead of time, right?
Right, yeah. I know, it's so strange, like, watching a lot of these other movies. And, you know, there's all those other movies, too, like, set back in the day. It's like, oh, you're betrothed to so-and-so, you're going to marry him. And, you know, it's like, oh, I don't even know if I love that person. And it's so fascinating, like, you know, that kind of world.
Yes, I agree, although I do believe that history is a bit whitewashed in that way because you know a lot of people were sneaking off to have sex before marriage, even back then.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, for sure. Yeah, they just had to play it off like they weren't.
Exactly. That they could still wear white. That's fine.
Yeah.
This paleontologist is also working very hard on getting more money for the museum so he can finish assembling this fossil. And he has a very important meeting with a man named Mr. Peabody, who is a lawyer in charge of an endowment and where $1 million is going to go. And of course, Dr. Huxley really wants it to go to the museum. So the first thing that he's going to do to meet with Mr. Peabody is go golfing. Now everything seems to be going fine until he shanks his ball and it goes on a different fairway. He walks over to retrieve it, but unfortunately a woman has thought it was her ball and she starts to hit it. And this is really the start of a non-stop comedy of errors of this movie. Of course, this woman is named Susan and played by Katharine Hepburn, and she is a spitfire. I think she's the best embodiment of that term. She's rapid fire. She's a little bit kooky, but in the sweetest way possible. And she just has such a great attitude about life and everything else. And she's just in her own little world.
Oh, yeah.
So she continues to play with his ball, unfortunately, and he keeps yelling back, "Mr. Peabody, I'll be with you in just a moment."
I know, so great.
And that unfortunately snowballs into her getting into his car instead of hers because they're both parked next to each other and they both look the same. And she's trying to drive away and he's trying to stop her. And it ends up with her driving away with him hanging on to the sideboards. He collects himself, tries to go back to Mr. Peabody. They try to finish their golf game. And he says, "Mr. Peabody, I'm going to make it up to you. I'm going to take you out to dinner tonight." And they go to a very swanky restaurant.
Hell yeah.
Bow ties and tails are required. And unfortunately, Dr. Huxley runs into Susan again. And there's a mistaken stolen purse involved. There's some ripped clothing on accident. One thing just leads to another with these two. And unfortunately for David, Susan's really starting to take a shining to him and really starting to want to spend more time with him. She ends up basically upending this man's whole entire life because he's supposed to be getting married and he goes off on a 2-day adventure with her because she ropes him in to transporting a leopard from New York to Connecticut.
I did not know that was coming, especially with the title. I figured it was going to be her name was going to be Baby because back in the day, these movies, like, oh, Kitty is the woman's name, or as Oppenheimer, oddly enough, like his wife's name is Kitty.
Exactly.
And I was like, okay, so bringing up Baby, Katharine Hepburn, Cary Grant, they're probably going to be in love, and who the hell knows is going to happen. I didn't look up anything about this movie, so when the Leopard shows up, I'm like, what the hell is going on? and not only that, but the whole thing was she starts playing with his ball, and he's just trying to be nice, can you give me my ball back? I'm literally trying to do something important here. And she goes, oh, da, 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 like you said, Spitfire, and she's in her own world, and she's like, what I'm doing is totally fine because she just completely, like you said, upends everything within the course of 2.5 minutes.
Yes.
And poor fucking Cary Grant is just he doesn't. It's all happening so fast. You can see in his face. He's like, I don't know what the hell is going on.
I'm trying to keep up, but I can't.
I don't know what to do. Yeah, she's
so
just
flustered.
so fast paced. She's so caffeinated, or that's just how she is. I really like the whole exposition of how they end up meet cuting, if you will.
Exactly, because the next day he goes to her house to try to talk to her about something, and that's where he's introduced to this leopard. The name of the leopard is called Baby, and her brother found it in South America and shipped it back home. This is all very not PETA friendly in this movie. It's 1938. And so this leopard now is this tame leopard that her brother and she also loves. And he's giving it to their aunt. And so she has to transport this leopard up to Connecticut. So bringing up Baby is where you get the title. But yeah, I love that you didn't look this up because it's even better because you were surprised by it.
Oh, yeah.
And so she ropes him into transporting this leopard. And of course, he's scared of it. And just hijinks after hijinks. And it's a wonderful film that is hilarious from start to finish. I really hope you liked it. And I love all of these side characters that get roped in their story as well.
Yes.
Like the psychologist who just,
oh my God,
through pure bad luck is part of all of their mistakes and to a point where his car gets stolen multiple times in this movie.
Right. Oh, that whole sequence when she's out there parked in front of the fire hydrant. Yeah. And of course it's something complete. They call it what, the fire plug?
Yes.
Back
a water
in the days,
plug or something.
Something like that. You're parked in the front of the water plug or fire plug. And she goes, oh, you talking about this car? Oh, this isn't my car. And it was like, what the hell is... Who is this woman?
So quick-witted. Oh, she's great. I love her so much in this movie. And to a point where, as you said, Cary Grant playing David Huxley is so out of his element and really just trying to keep up. And at one point he even says to her,
"Now, it isn't that I don't like you, Susan, because, after all, in moments of quiet, I'm strangely drawn toward you, but, well, there haven't been any quiet moments."
And then, because this movie needs to get crazier, there's a second leopard involved in this movie.
Yes.
And it becomes a case of mistaken leopard identity at one point, which is so good.
That was so fucking funny.
And I just love that this is just a really wacky, very clever rom-com. It's a complete, as you said, screwball comedy, but I think the reason why it works and why it holds up is that all of these misunderstandings and all of these situations that our two leads get into, they're not necessarily implausible.
Oh, definitely not.
And I think that's why even almost 100 years later, in fact, next week, to the day, it'll be 86 years that this movie was released.
Oh, damn. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yes, this film was released on February 18th, 1938.
Nice. Damn.
Yeah.
That is wild.
I would love to hear a little more. It seems like you like the movie, but of course, since it's a first watch, I definitely want to hear the feedback from you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I was saying, the whole thing with the car being parked in the wrong section was great. I liked the meet cute of both of them, and I really couldn't help but feel for the guy in a way. Like I did definitely feel myself getting a bit enraged. I think I texted you at one point like, this is a stressful comedy.
Yes,
because while it is screwball, it's still like. And it's fast paced. She's quick witted. She like has the upper hand all the time somehow. Like she's able to really just calm him down, but at the same time work him up. It was such a strange back and forth, but it was I laughed out loud many times. I think my favorite scene is when the dog at her aunt's house steals the bone, and they're sitting there at dinner, and he's just watching the dog because all she keeps telling him is that, oh, this dog just buried the bone in the backyard. We just have to wait for him to go dig it up again. And they follow the dog early on in the day, and he keeps pulling up a new boot. And in this, at one point he goes, oh, that's the fourth pair. And it's like, oh my God, the dog's dug up 4 pairs of fucking boots. And then the whole dinner sequence, and anytime he's about to take a spoonful of his soup, the dog gets off the chair and walks out, and he follows the dog. And it really just, I thought it was hilarious. And the whole thing at the police station later on in the movie was ridiculous. I just, like I said, it was a stressful comedy, but it was an enjoyable comedy too, because they're both great. We've watched Cary Grant before. I have only seen 1 or 2 other Katharine Hepburn movies, and the only time other than that I've seen her is when Cate Blanchett completely transformed into Katharine Hepburn for The Aviator. So watching this movie and watching Katharine Hepburn in a comedy and not so much a drama was really refreshing, because she can do both, and I think she might be better at comedy than drama.
Right? She's fantastic in comedy, and you don't usually consider her a comedic actress.
No, not at all. But the crazy thing is while I was watching this movie, and when it ended especially, I kept thinking back to Cate Blanchett's performance of her in The Aviator, and she's very much like this character in, it's a portrayal, but Cate Blanchett's end of things.
Katharine Hepburn was so smart, right?
Yes, yeah. But not only that, just like she was very smart, but she was quick-witted in life too, and she was, she didn't take anybody's shit. She was just very much like, this is who I am, and you're going to deal with it, and if you don't, then you can fuck off. And that's what I've always liked about Katharine Hepburn. And going back to The Philadelphia Story, which was a movie my wife and I recently watched over the last year, that's a comedy drama, and it's her and Cary Grant and Jimmy Stewart, and she's more on the serious side of a character in that movie. So I really like now having seen both sides of her, and hopefully she did more than this as a comedy.
She really didn't, unfortunately, and God, can you imagine seeing her in color?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can imagine it.
Because this is black and white, most of her movies were black and white, but damn, her in color and Cary Grant. That must have been a sight to see. But yeah, she was really in a lot of dramas. She wasn't much of a comedic actress, and especially because of what happened in this movie.
Interesting.
Which I'll get into in a minute.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, with her character? Because, all right. Yeah, because I don't know anything about this movie.
But I'm really glad you liked it.
Oh, yeah, it was great. Yeah, I rented it, and unfortunately I did watch it by myself because my wife hasn't been feeling the best the last couple of days. So if I can find this on either DVD or a Blu-ray, I'd like to own this one for sure.
Yes. Awesome. Glad to hear it. It's always the highest form of praise from John if he wants to own something in physical.
Yes, indeed. Keep physical media alive, everybody.
That's right. And so as we've been talking about, Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant starred in this film. Katharine I spoke about in our 74th episode because she's in The African Queen with Humphrey Bogart.
Yes, which was in color.
Which was in color, goddammit. That's
so
right.
we have seen her in color.
But she was much older.
Yes, but still gorgeous.
Still gorgeous, that's true.
Older women can be gorgeous and are gorgeous.
Oh, God, yeah. We're not ageist on this podcast.
No, not at all.
And then, as I said, she's in a couple other films with Cary Grant, including, as you said, The Philadelphia Story, made in 1940. The Holiday, not Roman Holiday. That's a different film with a different Hepburn in it.
Yes.
That has Audrey in it and Gregory Peck. Instead, Holiday also stars Cary Grant and was also released in 1938.
Oh, wow. I love when they when that happens, like you find out, that the two stars of the movie that you fell in love with did like one or two more movies together in like the span of like that year.
Yeah, especially because you get to see more of their chemistry together, and you always want more of it when they do so well.
Hell yeah.
And the last movie that they did together was in 1941, and it's called Suspicion.
Oh, cool.
The other movies that Katharine Hepburn did are A Long Day's Journey into Night, A Lion in Winter, On Golden Pond, and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Those are some notable ones.
Nice.
Again, those are all really serious movies, though.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, unfortunately, while Katharine Hepburn was born in 1907 and lived to 2003, Cary Grant was born in 1904 and lived to 1986, so he died a bit earlier than she did.
Damn.
Do you know that in 1933, the year your movie was released, actually, there was a live-action Alice in Wonderland?
Oh, really?
I had no idea, but he's in it.
I did not. No way. Who does he play?
Mock Turtle.
Oh, interesting. I haven't read the book, so I don't know who that is.
Exactly.
I base my Alice in Wonderland knowledge off the Disney animated movie.
Right, exactly. and Cary Grant was also in Gunga Din, His Girl Friday, Arsenic and Old Lace, which was from episode 20. It was your pick.
75 episodes ago. That's nuts.
Definitely was time to revisit Cary Grant movie.
Absolutely.
He was also in To Catch a Thief, An Affair to Remember, North by Northwest, and his last movie was Charade.
Oh, cool, with Audrey Hepburn.
And Walter Matthau.
Hey, that's one of my wife's favorite movies. She loves that movie.
Nice. I've never seen it.
Oh, wow. I have not either. We actually got a VHS copy of it at Amoeba, and the night that we put it on, it was one of the most fucked up VHSs. It was like completely warped and all twisted up, so unfortunately we never did watch it. But she also has it on Laserdisc.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. My wife has a couple Laserdiscs in the collection over here. It's pretty crazy.
Those were pretty high quality in the day.
Hell yeah.
And Howard Hawks directed this movie. He was born in 1896, and he lived to 1977. He wrote and directed a movie in 1932 called Scarface.
Oh, the OG.
The original.
Oh, wait, no. That is a Howard Hughes produced movie.
It is, and the movie with Al Pacino is in fact a remake. Howard Hawks also directed His Girl Friday, Sergeant York, To Have and Have Not, The Big Sleep, and a ton of really great westerns with John Wayne in them. Red River, Rio Bravo, El Dorado, Rio Lobo. Those are all really great movies. He also directed Monkey Business.
Oh, nice.
With Cary Grant and Marilyn Monroe.
Hey.
And he also directed Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
Oh, cool.
Which is not who I prefer, but, to each his own.
I don't think I've seen that one.
I haven't either. I just know it because it has Marilyn Monroe in it.
Likewise.
I just prefer tall, dark, and handsome like Cary Grant.
I understand.
Unfortunately, this movie bombed at the box office.
Oh, did it really?
It did, which is why Katharine Hepburn didn't do comedies after this.
Oh, no.
Which sucks so bad.
Oh, man.
We really
that does suck.
missed a lot of great comedies with her in it because of this.
Hell yeah. Damn.
And so Katharine Hepburn, because she had never done any comedy before and subsequently didn't really do any more after that, she was coached by Howard Hawks and also several alumni of vaudeville. And
oh, cool.
Howard Hawks actually employed them specifically to coach her. And I thought she was fantastic. She had great comedic timing. Her physical comedy was wonderful. Howard Hawks was extremely impressed. He actually said she moved like a boxer. She had such physical control of herself.
It's interesting that you say that because there was definitely an elegance to the way that she was handling herself in this movie.
Yes, and she's also not only vocally funny, but she's physically funny as well.
Yes, absolutely.
And Christopher Reeve based his performance as Clark Kent on Cary Grant's character of David Huxley.
No kidding.
Yep. Katharine Hepburn loved this leopard. And
oh, really?
The animal tamer said that she could absolutely work in the circus or be an animal tamer if she ever wanted to because she wasn't scared of it. She had very good tactics with approaching it and just working with it. Cary Grant, on the other hand, was not fond of the leopard at all. And so to torture him, Katharine Hepburn put a stuffed leopard through the vent in the top of his dressing room.
That's hilarious.
She says in her autobiography, he was out of there like lightning.
Awesome.
Yes, and so Cary Grant actually used a double many times in the scenes that they were with the leopard.
That's fucking hysterical. I love hearing the shenanigans behind the scenes.
Yes, totally. And Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant became really good friends, and they frequently socialized and went out to dinner together, double dating with their respective partners, which at the time was Howard Hughes.
Oh, snap. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, and they loved working together so much that they would arrive on set early just so they could hang out.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love that. And of course, because it was a wild animal, because it was back in the 30s, there's a lot of really cool visual effects in this film.
Yeah, I noticed that.
There's a lot of split screen and optical tricks, screen projection, whatever they could do to try to make it so this very big cat was in very closed spaces with them.
Yes.
And it worked out really well.
I agree. Definitely.
So there's a point in this film where Cary Grant is without his clothes.
Yes, there is.
And then he has to go and put on one of Katharine Hepburn's robes because he's in her house. So it's this lacy, fluffy thing with like fur trim on it. It's ridiculous. And of course, her Aunt Elizabeth walks in that moment, and she asks him why he is wearing a woman's dressing gown, and he goes,
"My goodness, the man who gets you is going to have a lifetime of misery. Everything's going to be all right. Yes, everything's going to be... What do you want?
Well, who are you?
Who are you?
Well, who are you?
What do you want?
Well, who are you?
I don't know. I'm not quite myself today.
Well, you look perfectly idiotic in those clothes.
These aren't my clothes.
Well, where are your clothes?
I've lost my clothes.
Well, why are you wearing these clothes?
Because I just went gay all of a sudden.
So this is actually considered by many film historians to be the first ever use of the word gay in its modern sense, which is sexual orientation.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's right. Yeah, because there's always the whole, oh, what a gay old time.
Yeah, happy, carefree. That's the old school definition of that word, right?
Yes. I think queer was used this kind of a similar way. Like, oh, something queer is going on.
That's something
odd. But it was
odd.
like something strange.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. And now it's an insult. But yes, right. And so obviously definitions change over time, but historians say that this is the first time it's actually used in the sense of sexual orientation. Because gay men first came into using it that way in the 1920s. So being 1938 kind of makes sense.
Sure.
And the crazy thing was it was an ad lib from Cary Grant himself.
No way.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
The museum scenes were shot at the Los Angeles Museum of Natural History.
Nice.
Which we're both fans of.
Hell yeah.
And the tar pits. Those are cool too.
Oh, the La Brea tar pits are pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, John, there is one key element of this film that's missing, which is an element we both normally love, and I'm wondering if you noticed it.
an element missing from this movie that we normally love.
It's an Oscar category.
Oh, music.
Music, that's right. There is no music in this film.
That's right. I noticed that at the end of the movie. I was like, I don't think... Huh.
Yeah.
I liked that, though. I thought that was pretty awesome.
It's very real life.
Very much so, yeah.
There's music in the opening and end credits, but that's it.
That's why I noticed it, because at the end credits, I was like, oh, there's a... Oh.
All of a sudden, it hits you in the face. You're like, whoa, that's right.
Yeah, like, there's music here. And, it's funny. I think it really worked out well to not have any music. Like you said, it brings in the realism a little bit more. And because they could have easily, with a lot of the leopard scenes, like, added some, like, suspenseful tone or something under, what's going on. And then, like, some, very... upbeat, like frilly, frolicky type of music when they're
chasing
steal the
after
car,
the dog.
or they're chasing after the dog. Yeah, but no, it really, I thought that worked out very nicely.
I think so too, especially because this movie's so fast paced. You don't want to make it too frenetic, right?
Definitely not.
And like your film, this is regarded as a classic. Premiere Magazine rated this movie as one of the 50 greatest comedies of all time.
Hell yeah.
And the American Film Institute has ranked the film at number 88 on the greatest movies of all time.
Awesome.
And it's also been voted as the 14th funniest comedy of all time by AFI.
Wow, number 14.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Right? I'm so glad that you enjoyed this film, and I think these two classic screwball comedies were a perfect pair this week. I love that we were both first-time watchers for our respective films. I always love when that happens.
Me too.
And it's nice to get back into some classic movies.
Yes, it's been a little bit.
And so, John, would you watch Duck Soup with your grandma?
I don't know if my grandma was a Marx Brothers fan, so I'm not sure. I feel like she would have liked it, though. I think my grandfather was a big fan of the Marx Brothers.
Nice. Makes sense.
Yeah. And V, I'm sure you've watched yours with your grandmother.
I actually watched this film for the first time in my 20s, so unfortunately I didn't get a chance to. She was born in 1929, though, so she would have grown up with Cary Grant movies, so it makes sense that she'd probably seen this at some point in her life.
Definitely.
These are both very innocent films and can be watched by anyone.
Absolutely, yeah.
And kids would like the big kitty in my film.
Yes, kitty was very, very cute. I'd like to pet the kitty.
Well, and that's one thing I thought of in my movie. Because it was 1938, a lot of people would never have even seen anything like that animal before.
Right, that's true. And it kind of looked a little menacing.
Oh, hell yeah. Absolutely. So it makes sense that they all freaked out. Well, great. So that wraps up our classic comedies this week. And John, do you want to talk about what we're doing next week?
Oh, sure. Why not? Let's do it. Next week, we are jumping into our reviewer requests. V and I have chosen the movies that we are going to discuss that Steve and Clarissa both sent our way. They sent us lists. And I'll be honest, both lists were great.
Yes.
Clarissa sent, I think, 7. Steve sent us 5. It's not a competition, but Clarissa sent us a few more, a lot of which I've seen, and actually V and I watched one of them very recently together.
Well, they're also on our future lists.
That's also very true, yes. But the one that I chose from Clarissa is a movie that I have actually only seen, I think, twice. I saw it in theaters when it came out. This film stars Jake Gyllenhaal, Chris Cooper, Laura Dern, and a whole handful of other people. This movie is directed by Joe Johnston. This is October Sky. Everybody. Thank you, Clarissa, for sending us October Sky.
Such a great film. I'm so excited to get into it.
Hell yeah. And V, what did you choose off of Steve's list?
As you said, he sent us 5 movies. 5 very good movies, either ones we've seen before that we are fans of, or, like this film, the one I chose, a movie that we both have heard great things about, but we'd never seen before. So this is actually a first-time watch for both of us.
Yes.
It is directed by Emilio Estevez. It is called The Way.
The Way! Like that song from Fastball?
Oh.
No.
Wow, that brings me back.
Right? I think that's from 1998 or 1999.
I was going to say, that came out right around the same time as October Sky.
It did.
And thanks again to both Clarissa and Steve for being such loyal listeners. They won our second reviewer request episode. And for those of you who are new to our podcast, if you write a review for us on the Apple Podcasts app, you will be entered in to win a future reviewer request episode.
Absolutely. Get them reviews in.
It definitely brings new movies into the fold for us, and thank you both so much. And we're really excited to cover both these movies next week.
Indeed we are.
Well, all right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, please rate, review, as we said, and subscribe to our podcast. We have just posted all of our lists of the movies you should miss, the movies you could miss, and the movies you can't miss of 2023 on social media. Please make sure to follow us to get those lists in your hand. And like we always say, film is a form of art, and in art, every opinion is valid, except if you think
any of the movies on my you should miss list were the best movies of 2023.
We can pretty confidently say that none of those movies were any of the best ones. Like, maybe we disagree on whether or not they're watchable with our audience. But yes, we are loving all the feedback from our recap episode and your opinions on those movies that we listed. Please keep them coming.
Hell yeah.
All right, until next week, everyone.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye-bye.